There is no denying that Christopher Nolan is one of the best directors out there. He is consistently delivering great films, and he has a filmography that hasn't had a single miss yet. You could tell me any of the movies in his filmography are your number one favorite out of his collection, and I would totally understand. But now that I've seen the Odyssey twice, I wanted to take the opportunity to go through and rank every film in Christopher Nolan's catalog. And hey, I would love to hear your personal rankings of his films in the comments down below if you're wanting to share. Without much further ado, let's get to it. Starting out with Nolan's film debut that he did on a budget of $6,000, we've got Following. Following is about an aspiring writer that is following strangers around in London, hoping one of them will be able to give him the spark he needs to write his next story. But one day when he ends up following a burglar, things take a turn as he is drawn into the criminal underworld. It is insanely impressive seeing what Nolan was able to pull off with such a minimalistic budget. And it's also really cool to see how much of his personal style is prevalent in this first film. The performances are solid, they're nothing mind-blowing, but they work really well here. And Nolan's non-linear approach to storytelling does a good job at drawing you into this film's story and keeping you wondering what's going to happen next. I do think there are some areas where it drags just a little bit. It almost feels like this initially started out as a short film and then they wanted to try and stretch it out to get to that feature length. But if you haven't seen Following yet, I would highly recommend checking it out. I'm going to be throwing it into B tier. Every time I watch Memento, I find myself falling in love with it more and more. Memento follows a man with amnesia who is trying to uncover the mystery behind who killed his wife. He can't form any new memories, so he tattoos new information onto his body to give himself notes, and he relies heavily on photos to piece things together. I was blown away by this total mindbender of a movie the first time I saw it. Guy Pearce and Carrie-Anne Moss are both excellent in their roles here. I actually think this is still my favorite Guy Pearce performance. It's well directed and the way it's edited is really awesome too. Every time I watch this movie, I find something new about it to appreciate. I'm going to be putting Memento up there into A tier. Insomnia is a solid thriller that had me hooked from beginning to end. The film follows two detectives that are trying to track down a killer in Alaska, but things take a horrible turn when one of the detectives accidentally kills his partner while the two of them are investigating a crime scene. To make matters even worse, the killer that the detectives were trying to track down witnessed the detective kill his own partner and is using that information to blackmail him in hopes of being able to be let go free. Robin Williams and Hilary Swank are the highlights of this movie. Robin Williams is surprisingly sinister as the killer that they're trying to track down, and Hilary Swank brings a lot of heart to the movie and plays off of Al Pacino's character really well. Al Pacino as the lead detective is solid. It's by no means his most exciting performance or his most interesting performance, but he's definitely not bad. This is the least Nolan feeling Christopher Nolan movie, and when I say that, I don't mean that it doesn't meet the quality level you expect from this director, but it does lack his stylistic DNA that you can find easily interwoven into any and all of his other projects. This feels like a good studio movie that happened to be directed by Christopher Nolan more so than it feels like a Christopher Nolan movie. It's still a good movie, but it is very straightforward and it lacks some of that spice you would hope for. I'm going to be putting Insomnia into B tier below Following. Batman Begins is quite possibly the best comic book origin story put to film. There's some really good origin stories out there, and this movie definitely has some competition, but this is my personal favorite. And a lot of that has to do with Christopher Nolan taking the Batman character and approaching him with such a grounded take, while also maintaining all of the elements that make Batman such a special character. The first hour of this movie has some of the best pacing I've experienced with a movie, making it one of Nolan's most rewatchable films in his catalog. Christian Bale is great as Batman and even better as Bruce Wayne. Liam Neeson and Cillian Murphy are phenomenal as Ra's al Ghul and Scarecrow. Sure, the action's a bit rough, but Christopher Nolan gets everything else so right. I'm gonna be putting Batman Begins in A tier above Memento. While I don't personally love The Prestige as much as other people do, this is still another solid film in Nolan's catalog. The Prestige follows two rival magicians that are trying to constantly one-up each other until eventually it leads to a tragedy. But that doesn't put an end to the shenanigans. Instead, the magicians continue to try and one-up each other as they become obsessed with perfecting this trick involving teleportation. On paper, this kind of story wouldn't usually draw me in or entice me. But what makes this movie work for me is the performances from Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. The two of them play off of each other so well. I don't think there's anything super mind-blowing here. I think it's a very well-made movie, but it's not one that I find myself wanting to rewatch over and over again. I'm gonna be putting The Prestige into B tier above following. The Dark Knight is on another level. This isn't just one of the best comic book movies of all time. It's not just one of the best crime thrillers of all time. It's one of the best movies ever made. The performances are impeccable across the board. Heath Ledger gives a perfect performance as Joker, and he truly elevates this film by setting such a high bar with his role. But I also gotta say, Aaron Eckhart as Two-Face is not talked about enough, because I think his performance of this movie is right up there for me as well. This film is excellently paced. The way its story is structured, with jumping back and forth between the Batman and Joker, makes this movie fly by. And Hans Zimmer's score is brilliant. This is a 10 out of 10 movie, and it's going right up there into S tier. Inception is a good movie, but I do think it's my least favorite of Nolan's sci-fi outings. Inception follows a heist crew that goes into people's minds while they're dreaming to steal information and secrets from their subconscious. I really loved this movie the first time I watched it, but I gotta say, when I rewatched it, I did find myself enjoying it a little less. I do think the first 2/3 of this movie are awesome, but that action-packed third act does go on a bit too long for me. Though I will say, it does bring things back around with that fantastic ending. The last 10 minutes of this movie are superb. I'm gonna be putting Inception into B tier above The Prestige. The Dark Knight Rises has its flaws, but despite those flaws, I think this still wraps up the trilogy in a very satisfying way. This film works so well as a send-off for Christian Bale's Batman and Nolan's Batman universe. Bale brings his A game once again, but this time around, we've also got Tom Hardy as Bane, who is such a highlight. Speaking of highlights, Anne Hathaway as Catwoman is top tier. I really love her in this role, and I think she crushes it as Selena Kyle. Despite feeling a little messy with its structuring, I think this film delivers on being the epic climax to one of the best film trilogies out there. The Dark Knight Rises is going into A tier below Memento. Interstellar is a brilliant sci-fi film, and getting to watch this movie into IMAX during its IMAX re-release was such a mesmerizing experience. Interstellar follows a crew of astronauts that are desperately trying to find a new home for humanity as Earth is dying and humanity is facing extinction. Not only do you have so many exceptional performances from the entire cast here, but this film is genuinely breathtaking, and Hans Zimmer's score is on another level here. I think this is genuinely some of his best work yet. I love this film, and the more I watch it, the more I appreciate it. I'm gonna be putting Interstellar up there into S tier. Dunkirk is such a criminally underrated film. Christopher Nolan's take on a war film isn't the action-focused war drama a lot of people were probably expecting from the movie when it was initially announced, but instead what we get here almost feels like a horror film. The way he builds tension throughout these three interwoven stories left me on the edge of my seat as we're watching these soldiers desperately try to survive this dire situation. The film does such a good job at making you feel helpless while also having sound design that is really terrifying at times. I'm gonna be putting Dunkirk up there into A tier. I love Tenet. I think this movie freaking rocks. Tenet follows an unnamed CIA agent that joins a task force that is responsible with preventing World War III. And weird timey-wimey shit starts to happen when a piece of technology is introduced into the mix that allows people and objects to move backwards through time using time inversion. I love how creative and completely bonkers this movie gets with its sci-fi. There are some truly breathtaking, jaw-dropping action sequences sprinkled throughout the entire movie that are truly unlike anything I've ever seen before. But what really brings this movie up for me and puts it on another level are the performances from John David Washington and Robert Pattinson. Their on-screen chemistry is amazing, and it is such a joy getting to watch them interact with each other. I loved every second of it. I'll never understand why this movie doesn't get more love. I'm going to be putting Tenet up there into A tier as well. Oppenheimer is Christopher Nolan's magnum opus. I think this is easily his best work yet. Cillian Murphy delivers a powerhouse performance that deserves every award it got. But then on the flip side of that coin, you've got Robert Downey Jr., who's acting his ass off and giving an equally powerful performance that also deserved every award it got. For a 3-hour film, it is wonderfully paced. I never felt like it was dragging at any moments, and I was glued to the screen from beginning to end. It is such a fascinating and haunting film to watch, and I think it is an absolutely brilliant piece of filmmaking. I'm gonna be putting Oppenheimer up there at S tier. It is the front runner for that tier level. And finally, we have made it to the Odyssey. I was blown away by the Odyssey the first time I watched it, but somehow I found myself loving it even more upon my rewatch. Matt Damon crushes it in the leading role as Odysseus and does a lot of the heavy lifting here. Tom Holland and Anne Hathaway deliver super captivating performances that had me glued to the screen anytime they were on it. Robert Pattinson is phenomenal as the antagonist. He pulls this role off so well. Himesh Patel is superb. Elliot Page and Zendaya are both scene stealers. Everyone in this film is on their A game. The action is amazing, the visual effects are mind-blowing, and visually this movie is stunning to look at. It feels like everything Nolan has made over his career was leading up to this movie. It is so damn good. On my first viewing, I did have some issues with the pacing. I thought it felt a little rushed during the first act, and I did feel like that transition from the second act to the third act dragged on just a little bit. But on my second viewing, I didn't feel those pacing issues at all. I think Nolan really knocked it out of the park with this movie. I'm going to be putting the Odyssey up there into S tier, below The Dark Knight, but above Interstellar. And there is my personal ranking of every movie in Nolan's filmography. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, and all that YouTube stuff. And what are your favorite Nolan movies? How would you rank his filmography? I'd love to know.